Yo, Ken, welcome to the Mick Pat Show, Dog-Eared Dialogues, Part 3 of East of Eden. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate you for joining in, and hopefully you are enjoying East of Eden if you're kind of reading along with it before listening to these parts. And yeah, we really hope you're getting a lot out of the conversation here. We certainly are enjoying it. I've pretty much basically listened to the book a second time at this point, just going through it again to make sure I keep a correlation of, chapter summaries and timeline order. And it's nice because Billie Jean's been listening to it too.
Nice.
The only issue is that when your spouse is consuming something you enjoy so much after you did it, if they're not equally enthusiastic, it could be painful.
Mm-hmm. Is she somewhat enthusiastic, or
she thinks
she kind of burned out?
She's like, "Oh no, it's a good book.
Yeah,
great." But the thing she keeps saying is like, "It's a good book. I don't think it's life changing." I'm like, just give it some time, okay? And I get it. I don't think chapter 1 is life changing, or not chapter 1, part 1. I don't think part 2 is life changing.
Yeah,
but I do think part 3 is where I was starting to like really grapple with things.
Yeah,
and like especially just like reflecting on mortality. And, how you love your loved ones, how you leave them, what your legacy is.
Yep. And I think that I don't know if you can relate to this, but as a kid driving around with my dad in the car.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know.
Sorry. There was.
Oh.
Hey, he'd put on the talk radio. And I was like, whether it was sports or news, I was just like, this is wretched.
Yeah. Dude, talk radio as a kid was so awful.
I have zero interest in this at all. And now I'm a 30-something-year-old man.
Listen to podcasts.
Just listening to people. Yeah, like it's like talk radio on crack. It's just hours upon hours of just talking and talking and talking.
Yeah.
And then I'll turn on the old rock station, the old country station. I'm like, not feeling it. I go back to the talkers.
Yeah.
And so I think what I'm getting at here is it may in somewhat depend on the stage of life you're in and what you're thinking and what you're going through that this book affects you.
I also truly think that this is one's going to catch me flack. I think that not as a generality, but just as a experience statement. I'm not saying men experience more trauma than women or anything like that. But I do think that I've experienced more, perhaps, like Cathy's and Charles than my wife has. I think Billie Jean would not see that as like a challenge statement because she knows like the jobs I've worked and the people I've hung around and stuff and like all that. And so I think like perhaps maybe like a little bit of it might be too of like, I don't know if my wife has ever struggled with Timshel, to be honest. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
I think my wife might be Aaron.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, or like she's just good.
Yeah.
And she can't really like. I don't know if she's ever really wrestled with the concept of not choosing to not sin. Thou mayest. You know what I mean?
Like Mace Windu, she likes to do whatever the rule is. She enjoys doing the rule.
Does she not enjoy it when you're not doing the rules?
Exactly. Yeah, so it's
that's crazy because that's Billie Jean.
Yeah, dude, it was just like
Billie Jean's like, we should just do the rules. The rules are the best option going forward. And then like if I'm like, rules smoogles, she's like, we're not having fun anymore. I'm not having fun, and we are breaking the rules.
Yep. And so that's why like my wife like never got spanked or like disciplined because you didn't have to.
Yeah,
she just was like, what's the program? I'm doing it. And that's
and that's why you married him.
It's probably a better
that's the best wife you could hope for.
It's a smoother way through the place.
But do you really want a rebellious wife who's like
no,
who is constantly questioning like the order of operations and why we do things?
Right. No, I don't. But I was the one who, like, when my mom said, we're standing on the curb, and she said, do not step 1 foot in the street.
Yeah.
I was like 3.5. I stared her down in the eyes,
like,
and I just tapped my toe on the street and put it back on the curb.
What would you do if one of your boys did that to you, man?
Well, I would suppress a grin.
Yeah. This is why.
I'd fake a cough and suppress a grin and a little chuckle. And then, depending on my mood, I would either gently explain to them why Daddy says to not put your foot in the road because I care about them and love them. Or I'd say, what the hell? And I would slap their hand or give them a thump right in the noggin. Thump with the finger, not a
like
fist
a dog
thump.
flick.
Yeah, dog
like
flick,
dog
exactly.
Yeah.
The dog flick comes in handy. But so, all that to say, yeah, that first reaction is what I would shoot for, but the second reaction could be also what comes out of me in my own,
Timshel, man.
in my own. Exactly, that's what I was going to say. In my own efforts to choose one way or the other.
Well, all I said. Thanks for joining us. We are drinking some beer, Tree of Knowledge. It is an unfiltered DDH DIPA, which is what again, Pat?
It's not an illegal drug. It stands for unfiltered double dry hopped IPA. Double dry hopped.
What's the other D?
Double dry hopped DDH. I don't know what I don't know.
The DIPA. The DIPA.
Is it a misprint?
I don't think it's a misprint, man. I bet it's just like unfiltered double dry hopped dry IPA. You know what I mean?
Or maybe it's like a
double IPA.
It's a double IPA, but they want you to know it's a double dry hopped. And then it's supposed to be a DIPA, double IPA.
To their credit, and we're not reviewing beers on this, but to their credit, I did say it tastes like pineapple.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, think juicy pineapple, ripe papaya, and peach nectar.
Yeah.
I think they kind of hit it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Props to you guys, Tree of Knowledge. I'm not giving you thumbs up or anything like that right now. That's a different segment. Pat, there's really not too many new characters in the corner, but we, for the first time, get some real, actual, I guess you could say, development. It's like Aaron and Cal are introduced for the first time. You know what I mean? Like they now have dialogue and personalities.
Exactly. Yeah. In the end of part 2, they're basically just babies, toddlers, and they and when we find them here, as we go through part 3, they are, we first see them kind of probably at this I think it's like this 10 to 12-year-old stage, young boys.
I think they said they were 11 years old. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this. Which is a great age of boys. That's when I remember being a boy. It talks about it gives a great example of them out rabbit hunting, and I think about this with me and my buddies, my cousin growing up. That's the time of life when you have some freedom for the first time, and that's also when you kind of start learning about the world.
Yeah,
you start because you're hearing what the kid up the street says from his older brother. These things, whatever it is, and you're developing thoughts on your own. You have to defend yourself on your own, or you're having to, navigate the world on your own. And so that's kind of where we intersect the Trask Boys, beginning to navigate the world on their own. And Aaron and Cal are really depicted in very, very similarly to, to Adam and Charles, and in how they are as people. Aaron is described as handsome, good-natured, morally upstanding, and he's a little naive too, I think. And Cal's kind of manipulative, worldly, knows what's going on, maybe street smart kid, a little bit conniving, and he's kind of always making a plan, making moves. He's making moves.
He's cunning like his mother, dude.
Yeah,
just like Cathy.
But he's also protective of Aaron as well. And so we've seen this, or seen them develop as, this next generation of Cain and Abel.
Smoke break.
Smoke break.
Hey, Ken, it's Mick, and I've got something important to talk about. We all hope we never find ourselves in a self-defense situation, but life's unpredictable. Enter the National Self-Protection Plan from Attorneys on Retainer, an actual credible law firm you can put on retainer for your self-defense needs. For just $35 a month, you get national coverage in all 50 states for criminal and civil legal representation in self-defense situations. complete with a 24/7, 365 toll-free emergency line. That's real legal support when you need it most. What's in the package? Bail bonds, scene cleanup, firearm replacement, even mental health counseling. Plus, 0 fees for a laundry list of defense-related costs like expert witnesses. So support the show and get yourself some peace of mind. Click the link in our show notes or visit our sponsors page to sign up for the National Self-Protection Plan from Attorneys on Retainer.
Hey folks, Pat here. If you're like Mick and I, you're a fan of classic tales like Lonesome Dove, Blood Meridian, The Three-Body Problem, and Steinbeck's East of Eden. With Audible, you can dive into these epic stories anytime, anywhere. Sign up for a free month, and your first audiobook is on the house. To start your free trial and support our show, click the link in the show notes or swing by the sponsors page on our website.
Want an awesome website for your podcast? Check out Podpage. We use it for the Mick Pat show, and it's a game changer. Set it up in minutes, no coding needed. Support the show by using our link to get started. Your podcast deserves a home as great as ours. Podpage, the one-stop solution. Just curious for you, is there anything in Aaron, at least from what we, know about so far in the book, is there any part of Aaron you see that's not Adam?
I think
it almost seems to me like Aaron is just Adam to his core, and Cal is Charles and Cathy. You know what I mean? Like characteristically.
Yeah, I think that Aaron does have some of his... he differs from Adam in that, like, Adam is just... Adam's big downfall is his passivity, and Aaron's downfall is his naivety.
Yeah, sure.
Like, just so it's different sides of a coin there, and so they are their own. He doesn't write them as just a mirrored image, and they do have their own. Like when I think of them, I think of like this distinctive characters between Adam and Aaron, not just like clone copies almost, because there are little like interactions throughout where you see how they are their own person. Sure.
Yeah, I can see it.
Some other characters that a new character coming in is Abra, and she's the same age as Aaron and Cal, and she's the daughter of a local businessman, but she's kind of portrayed as a little bit wise beyond her years or mature, just in the way that she understands, like she speaks more like an adult, or like she has a handle on the situation.
I think there's even like a line of kind of like meta level dialogue of just like, as young girls tend to, they mature and desire to be adults sooner than boys. And it's like she definitely sees these boys, recognizes they don't have a mother, and immediately sees an opportunity to be like what young girls seek to be. And all young girls that I can think of when I was 11 or 12, no 11 or 12-year-old girl wanted to be an 11 or 12-year-old girl.
Right. Like the petty boy things going on. She's just so above it.
They either always wanted to be your girlfriend, your mom, your sister. They never wanted to be a little girl. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how I think about like all of the girls I remember being friends with then, And Abra clearly here is like, she's ready to be the mom to these boys.
Definitely. And, and we'll see her biggest development in this story really comes in, part 4.
Oh yeah.
As she continues on in this story. And we get to see also some other characters who've been mentioned before. They're now adults, which is the Hamilton children. And the main, there's really 3 that I think are mainly focused on in part 3, which is we have Tom, and he's a lot like Sam. He's almost, he thinks like Sam. He's the one working with Sam, and he's an inventive, dreamer, creative type. But he isn't Sam Hamilton all the way.
Yeah, he's just Sam's messiest parts. But none of Sam's duckish behavior.
Right.
And I mean that in like, Tom can't let things go.
Right. And I think also he's Sam Hamilton if Sam didn't have perspective on the world. Because Sam has this like broad, vast perspective and a worldview that's really ascends. But like Tom is kind of down focused, like nose in it. And so he can't rise above or get away from it. And And whenever Samuel's talking about Tom, he talks about these things, you know, and he makes reference to his concerns for Tom.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting that they, like, several times in this part, like, I don't remember them saying it in any of the other parts, but they say Samuel Hamilton was a beautiful man, and what Tom lacked was Samuel's beauty.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't think it, I'm like, I don't know if they mean that just like physically, like Samuel Hamilton was this, you know, burly, bearded, tawny skinned, just handsome as hell farmer Irishman that just had an elegance to him in the way he just carried through life. Or if they mean like the beauty of like Samuel's mind to like have these super complicated like philosophies that he can simply just let go. And like the self-awareness of like, you know, when he always says like, you know, I only feel myself becoming more Irish when I get invited to talk.
Right.
And then he's like, and then he warns someone, he's like, careful now, I could fear myself turning Irish, you know? And so I kind of like, I think like, I don't know what they meant by that, but I don't know. Do you feel like you got like, what do you kind of think when they reference the two in comparison?
Yeah, I agree with you, because I think I do kind of see also like, this is maybe like an extreme example, but like, take a guy who's just like well-rounded Renaissance man. He can garden and play some music, but he can also like fix anything, and just like he's jovial. But then he's got the son who's kind of like in the basement, who's like the emo kid, who's like he's like doing a lot of art, you know. Hello like, there. Yeah, exactly. Like he's down there like in the basement, like, but he's also like, you know, he's an artist in his own right type of thing, but you know, he's not really that as fun to be around, or like he just doesn't have that it thing, and you know, that's kind of a little bit what I see here, that like just he's the incomplete version of it, and he's his own self, because I think he's a bit of a tortured soul, and like I was saying, how Sam references, I forget the exact quote that Sam says. He says, you know, things along the line of like, you know, if Tom heard about this, he'd be mulling it over for years, or like he'd be trapped in it, or whatever. Like he's not going to be able to get out of this, or he's, you know, he kind of spins out. And so, and I think I think I've seen guys like this, and I picture guys like this who do like come up in their father's footsteps, and then in some ways never get out of their father's shadow. And to be like the son of a great man can be a difficult thing if you're, you know, like, you're like, you want to be great, so you just be like your dad, but then you never get to be who you are. You
never get to be you
know, in that sense. And so there's some of that going on here with Tom, and we'll get into that as his story unfolds. And then there's also Will, and Will is a wheeler dealer entrepreneur, and he's the realist. You know, people bring business ideas to him, and he'll just tell you straight up right away. He'll say, that's trash. That's a bad idea.
Will's this song I thought of when I was listening to the section for Will. It was just, you know, you hear like he's the dude slinging cars, has comfy furniture to make people at ease with the, you know, idea of how much money they're about to spend. I just think like, baller, shot caller, 44 inches on Paula. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's Will 100%. Like so wrapped up, and that he can't even like take time to mourn his dead dad. Right.
And he is also that same type of guy you're singing about. Like nobody knows how rich he is or not.
He's a hustler, baby.
Yeah, because nobody. It's like there's people in the world too where, you know, like you got your social media clout guys where it's like, yeah, they got 3 Lamborghinis, but they're probably not wealthy.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. But then you've got like. Then there's other guys who are just like, you see those other people in the world too, where you just like see that guy and you're like,
he's got the Toyota Sequoia.
Yeah.
But he's also like got like 50 Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. Or even like a guy who's just like, but he's not flaunt or whatever. You're like, that guy's rich. I know that guy's rich. When it comes to Will, we're like, we have no idea, but he's got the ideas. We also hear in this book too, or there's, whether he's going to a meeting or not, he always tells people he's got somewhere to be, and then he'll just go around the corner to the coffee shop and sit there for a few hours, as if to leave everybody in mystery of, you know, what's he got going on? He's got something going on. He's in the mix. You know, he knows the next thing coming. And so that's who Will is. And he also brings a little bit of a voice of reason to the family as well. Like he does have good kind of feet on the ground. Hey, this is, if we're getting away from all these deep thoughts and things, you can go hang out and behind the barn with Lee and Sam and drink whiskey and talk about stuff that may or may not exist. But like, I can tell you, like, real world, here's the deal.
Yeah. He's definitely comes off to me as like if Samuel lost all of his dreamer abilities and just just became that solely entrepreneurial farmer, right? Like he patented the right inventions. He made people pay him up front for work that would get done eventually, and made sure that like all the work he agreed to do would be work that came with like dividends down the road of like, oh, hey, like I need you to work on this fence again. I need, you know what I mean? Stuff like that.
Yeah. And
he's just all of those pieces of Samuel.
And he is the kid too, who's like sees his dad and knows what he doesn't want out of it. And he doesn't take,
which is sad, dude.
Like,
you know what I mean? Like the like you can tell he says it. I don't know if he says it here in part 4, right? But like Will has that comment about how like, look what all those ideas got them, pretty much. Like got him and my brother Tom. Like didn't do anything for him. Yeah. Like that dreaming. But anyways.
Yeah, and then we have also Desi is the daughter of Sam, and she's just this content, pleasant person. She lives in town. She sews dresses. She doesn't even really make money doing it.
10 months in advance, though. Like people have to order dresses, or 20 months in advance. They have to order dresses.
So at the peak of her business, she's the it thing. She's the thing in town, but also she's not even in it for the dresses as much as she's in it. She just wants a bunch of people coming by every day and sitting to talk and like be together. Yeah. And so she's this, people want to be around her, and she brings like this life and joy.
She's the social part of Sam.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Of like only Sam's social stuff was funneled down
to her for sure. And then we get into like kind of the opposite of this Desi, which is the daughter Una. And she's briefly described, and she's kind of just like a semi-dark or brooding character.
They say she's not pretty.
Yeah.
They say like she's got pretty hands and pretty feet.
So she, and she passes, like she's spoken of, and then she passes away.
Yeah, she dies almost immediately upon like getting any idea of who she was and what she meant to Samuel.
And we may talk about it more, but as Desi may be the social side of Samuel, I think Una was the private side of Samuel. There is I think this rings true for just lots of humans who can hit the really high highs. Those are the humans who also can hit the really low lows. The guy who's and I've seen this a lot with like my buddies who struggled with depression and stuff. Like lots of those guys, when they're in a social circle, they're typically the life of the party. Also it's like they've got these high highs, low lows, and so Una kind of embodies these like this darker side of Samuel and his his struggles, his thought life, his doubts, or the things that we wrestle with in life. And so that's where and we'll get into it, is how like when she passed away, it was a real loss for Samuel. And that's really the characters who come on the scene here, and the other characters are pretty well set on their paths, who we've talked about. And so, and we've character-wise too, in a more broad perspective, we're looking at, you have the Trask family and the Hamilton family, and while they are, in some ways mirrored to each other, as far as, they're not necessarily mirrored, they're almost different sides of a pendulum in their origins and who they come from. We see them in part 3 all start to have to deal with the choice. And we're going to talk about the choice more.
Yeah. So the kind of summary for part 3, right, is like first time in the book really that like death is introduced as like a forefront problem. And with it, the concept of, immortality through the pieces we leave behind, who we are after our death goes on to have profound impacts on others and like their psyche. And this ultimate theme of Timshel, which is a Hebrew word, which is translated here in Steinbeck's text as meaning thou mayest, in reference to thou mayest choose to overcome sin. Thou mayest choose to sin or not. It's introduced in a very philosophical discussion between Lee, Samuel, and Adam. And in it, the following chapters after it's introduced, we kind of just get like back to back examples of Timshel. And it feels very, to me, it feels very like intentional. Mm-hmm. Like Steinbeck really wanted to be like, here's the core thing, and here are like, 10 or 15 examples across a whole spectrum of characters and stories where thou mayest sin or not. Thou mayest choose to sin, thou mayest choose not to. And this concept of like true power and like the like Lee's allusion to like, this choice elevates man to the position of God. Like the opportunity to choose to sin or not is essentially the opportunity to choose fate and to choose destiny itself. And it, gives us the capacity of being absolute good in spite of the opportunity to do absolute evil. And I think that's it's a really beautiful part. And like, of course, Steinbeck's main theme for the book as a whole, but hopping on into it, I think chapter 24 is just a good place to kind of focus. Aaron and Cal are these young boys now. They're 11. And Samuel Hamilton is accepting that he is old. And it is the death of Una that we see age him. He receives word that Una dies, and with it, a part of his spirit died. And he continually confides in Tom, telling Tom, like, you have to kind of confront these things and work through them. And it says, though, but like Samuel never got back to who he was before that. And that like all of his children saw and realized when they came to see him for Thanksgiving that he had like aged severely. And they're like, what happened while we were gone living our lives? What happened to Dad? Dad can't die. That's not possible. Samuel can't die. And Tom like lets them know, is like, well, like Una's death is what took a piece of him away, and it's broken his spirit to a degree in which like he won't be able to bounce back. And I think like that in of itself is interesting, because like I feel like I've seen that especially among the elders in my life, when I think about my grandparents or other people's grandparents and stuff like that. And like, dude, the death of a kid just like, it radically, I think, changes a parent, especially at that age's ability to like just be in good health. And it's not even like a mental thing. Like, I'm not saying like they're always depressed or anything. I'm just talking like, dude, I really do feel like my grandmother's condition after my uncle's death, like right during COVID, I really do feel like my grandma's health really started like, she lived, till 2023, but like it was still like right after that is like when I feel like it started getting worse and worse and worse, and she never really recovered out of that. Where prior to that event she had like beaten cancer and stuff like that just like a few months before, and was like on an upward spin, right? And so it was just one of those things of like, yeah, like I get what they're saying, this image that you have. And I didn't pity my grandmother, I didn't be like, oh, my grandmother, she's in this funk. I thought she was a very jovial, happy, strong woman. And I still thought that. Yeah. But I really just do think like the idea of this, death and how we have to confront death with our loved ones. When it occurs, it really does chip a piece of you away. And at a certain point in age, I really just don't think physically you bounce back from those deaths.
Yeah, and there's supposed to be something psychological there too, where it's just like, it's you never spend any time thinking about how your
children are going to
die. Like you do have worries for your kids, but like
sure,
like as a kid, you eventually realize people die. People typically older die. So like I'm starting to process and deal with the fact that my parents will die someday. Right? There's a usually, it's not usually there's a long build up to that, and like a long processing, and like okay, then it happens, and it's still hard then. But then, there's no placeholder in your psyche for really that. It's actually just your worst fears coming true. The worst from the time they're born. That's like your worst fear is like the death of a kid, and you don't have it's only filed in that place in your brain that is the worst outcome. And then for it to happen, whether at any point in your life to outlive your kids is that the thing that changes you. And it's interesting too, like, and then even I've seen it happen to people too, even when it's not with the death of a kid or anything in particular, but like just weird when all of a sudden you do come to visit and all of a sudden they're old. You know, it's like it's like, well, how did that happen? Yeah, and that's what these kids are. Sam's kids are struck with when they come to visit. Just this, what happened to the guy, this
immortal man, that was life. Literally physical life incarnated. Right. He's this, borderline mythical man in the way his family themselves view him. But yeah, so it's after that like Samuel accepts that it's time to hang up the good old farming hat, and him and Liza agree to go visit their kids post Thanksgiving, because they get a letter saying, hey, Mom, Dad, how about you come on a vacation and come stay with us for a while? Yeah. Which I find really interesting, because like that concept of like grandpa coming to visit and not working anymore is not a death sentence, right? But like I guess back then, like the concept of like, if I stop working and I go on vacation, it's gonna take 2 weeks to get there, and then we'll be there for probably like 3 weeks, and then it'll be a hard journey to go back, but then the other kids are going to want us to come visit, so we'll probably be gone for like 4 years. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like I guess I understand, like it's a way different concept today versus then.
Because even like the reality of the time it took to do such a thing. Oh yeah. But then also like, I don't like when my grandpa sold his business, like he really struggled, like.
Really?
Yeah, like when he finally, like he had retired, but then he'd still like, he owned some property. Like he was a landlord to a couple of his restaurants he'd sold. He had still owned the properties. And then when he finally and he was always he was like Sam Hamilton, always having ideas and things and working on something. He's always sketching out a new design on a napkin and working towards something, working towards something as a man had a vision for his life in the future and where he wants to go. And all of a sudden just to hang it up, and there's no nothing.
He just hung it everything up at once.
I mean, it essentially like when he hung up the final thing. Sure. Like the final thing, the one that had been, when he hung up the final thing, it was this like, you're accepting the fact that you're like, I'm just now here till I die. Right?
That's so strange.
And so it is like, for a man like Sam Hamilton, who's this like driven visionary, to now have, there's no like, even if it's all pretend in a sense, like your future visions and your plans and all the stuff you're going to do, but it's getting wrapped up. And you're like, and then I think what happens to people is they all of a sudden they get into their 80s and they look back on their life and they say, that all happened a little faster than I expected. And now I'm done. Like it's done. And so it's a really hard thing to go through. So that's where, and it's funny too, where Sam is still, he's not like an invalid. He's coherent enough to know what his kids are doing.
Oh yeah.
And you see that with like, it's like,
he's coy.
Yeah. It's, he just pretends, he just goes along with it. He's like, all right, like, yeah, okay, I'll come visit. Yeah. But in himself, he knows the decision he's made.
Yeah, he knows it. And like he says, I know where I'm going. Yeah. Which I just think is interesting, because like my grandfather has gone and visited so many dying men and women who were like on their deathbed and stuff. And they were dudes that he was hanging out and doing life with up until the day they died. Right. And it would be like, sometimes they knew they were going to die for months. whether it was like diabetes or cancer. And so I guess I've just never really thought like there's been that many people I've encountered through like the, older people in my life that have really just hung up the hat. Like my grandfather, he retired from work back in his 60s. Mm-hmm. But like he keeps himself busy with like meeting up with dudes and like doing, just faith-based stuff, meeting up with people, going on to conferences. I just really can't imagine him like not driving to go meet someone. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like for coffee or something, and just talk about like how they're doing in their walk with God or whatever, And I think even if, I don't know, I just genuinely believe like even if it was going to kill him, he'd still just be like, well, I'd rather die in my truck driving to meet someone than just like give meeting up with people. Right. Which I get, I mean, like, can you imagine a day in your life where you just give up meeting up with people?
Right. I'd be like, no. Yeah. I don't, and I think that's where it's just the
I think it's a different time.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like a different concept time wise, but
for sure.
Anyways, all that said, he is saying his goodbyes to his friends and he saves going to Adam for last. And he's been a couple months since he last visited Adam, and he says, it's described like Adam is still like, even though Adam had this moment where he's, he named the boys and he moved on with life, like he still has not moved on from the pain of losing Cathy. And Samuel knows it, and like Lee knows it, and Sam kind of like has this dread about him of like going to visit Adam because he knows who Adam is now. But in this moment, like Adam does say like, you being here and knowing this is goodbye, like has brought me kind of like woken me up a little bit. And they start sitting and talking, and then Adam's like, Lee, grab the tea because we're clearly gonna have a convo. Sam, stay for dinner, right? And they get onto this topic of like something profound that Lee has discovered that he wanted to share with Samuel. And Lee goes into this discussion about how he was looking into these two translations of the Bible, and one was a command of God to Cain to it was a command to essentially like overcome sin, a command like you will overcome sin, like there is no option, you have to do this. Then the other one was like a promise, and it was like promised, like I promise you will win over sin. And even though it's not a command on the individual, there is no choice. Right. It is a promise from God.
Yeah, and one being you like must.
Yeah.
Like one, this is like you must. The other one being like, yeah, that in that other sense. And so it was binary in the two translations.
And then Lee's talking with like his more like Chinese philosopher family members. And they get into like trying to make sense of this phrase in the different translations so much that they go and learn Hebrew. And they talk about, and Lee talks about how like funny this concept is of like these old wise Chinese philosophers learning Hebrew and then painting Hebrew in like essentially like Cantonese like methodology of like up to down and like left to right. And he's just like, can you imagine that? Like me and these three old Chinese men learning Hebrew and painting with, ink and brush Chinese, not Chinese, but Hebrew characters. And they invite a rabbi out to help them understand it, and this Jewish scholar to help them understand. Eventually, they all settle on this interpretation of this word, which is interpreted different ways in scripture, but it's Timshel. And they settled on the translation that Timshel means not you must or you will, but thou mayest. You may overcome sin. You may rule over sin. And the whole quote here that I really like from Lee is, but the Hebrew word, the word Timshel, thou mayest, that gives a choice. It might be the most important word in the world. That says the way is open. That throws it right back on man. Why, that makes a man great. That gives him stature with the gods. For in his weakness and his filth and his murder of his brother, he has still the great choice. He can choose his course and fight it through and win. And this is the crux of the whole novel, I think, thematically, is that no matter what evil a man does, a human does, right? Not just man, but like no matter what evil humans do, they have a choice. And I think it's kind of like the point of like emphasizing Cathy's not a human.
Mm-hmm.
There will never be a choice for Cathy. Cathy can never choose to overcome sin.
Mm-hmm.
But every other character is demonstrated to be shown like they have a choice. And that choice is the choice to choose their destiny, essentially, like to choose if they will be good or if they will be evil. And I do want to say this. Everywhere I've looked online, every Jewish scholar and biblical scholar has said, like, this is an incorrect interpretation of this Hebrew word. This is not what the Hebrew word means. A lot of people have conceded, like, yeah, like, you could theoretically say, just like how you could say, like, you know, you can rephrase anything, right, to kind of mean one thing or another. Like, thou mayest. It's not a far stretch from the literal translation of how the word's used in Hebrew, but the word in Hebrew really pretty much is like a 100% confidence like case of this will occur, and it is usually used in the form of a command, like this will be done. And it's used in the 100% absolute, right?
Right.
So all that said, Steinbeck did reach out to Jewish scholars. He did go back and forth with them, and he did believe, like, in the conversations and stuff like that when he was writing the book, he was like, hey, I think we have enough of a case here to make it this. And there's even letters you can read online where Steinbeck's like, thou mayest disagree. Like, you know what I mean? And like, it's just kind of a joke, but like he was clearly aware that like he was stretching it here, but it's the crux of the story. And the truth is like I think if Steinbeck had been a little bit more versed and just verses in the Bible, right, he would have seen like that there were other verses that could kind of support this idea, right, like that we have the choice to sin or not, right. And it's not a new thing to, I think, you or I, right? I think like you and I are both very familiar with this concept as Christians,
right,
like, and believers. Like, yes, I do have a choice. I don't think God predestined me to sin or not sin.
Right.
Like, I think it's my choice it's my choice if I swear. It's my choice if I get angry. It's my choice if I lust. It's whatever, right? It's also my choice if I find victory in those things and choose not to do them.
Right, because this is a commentary on the free will of man.
Yeah, exactly. Which might have been more debatable, I guess, back then. I mean, it's still a debate now, but maybe it was more debated amongst like theological circles.
Right.
All that said, though, the beauty is that we see this emphasized over and over again in these following chapters in many different ways. And I think it's like the sentiment is very sincere in how Timshel, like, there's not an example of Timshel in this book that I feel is cheap or shallow. Right. And with that, the rest of the conversation, just to kind of hit on these other themes that recur, you know, Samuel essentially confronts Adam and says, like, tells Adam, you know, from a place of experience and empathy that, like, the best way to move on and to let go of these bad memories or these fabricated fictional memories is to replace them with the good ones, even if the good memories are fabricated. Like whatever, like, but you have to let go of the pain. You have to let go of the loss, and you have to accept like the natural human process is for memories and new experiences to replace old ones. And that the issue with holding on to this figment or fantasy of a loved one after they are gone, whether they died or whether you lost them because they left you, is a very dangerous thing. And it's actually like it's like a sin, the way Samuel describes it. He says, I can see it in you. You hold on to her still. She comes to you in the night, and Adam's like getting angry. He's like, what do you know? Like, get away from me. He's like, I know it because God bless me and like God bless my wife, but it's not fair to Liza how she's come to me in the nights. And she is not Liza, right? It's whoever this loss was before he came to America. Yeah. And it's like, and I've prayed and I've wished that Liza had her own imaginary like partner come to her, but I know it's not true, and I know she's only to me, and I know it's unfair that I still have this fabricated imagination fantasy about who she would be here now with me. And it's like, it is very interesting because most people, I think, just freely fantasize and they don't think at all about like, is that even a good thing to do? Like, is it a good thing to be nostalgic and fantastical in your memories of a loved one? Maybe sometimes it is harmless, right? To have a little bit of nostalgia and focus on things, but it does prevent you from being present with your current loved ones, right? And I think it can make you resentful. Yeah. But what are your thoughts on that? In that kind of back and forth argument, because I think it comes up later on a couple times too. But I'm just curious it's like, what are your thoughts on like that postulation?
I think that because it never is spelled out for us what Samuel's like past is, but we get little hints at it, and it kind of suggests that he had his own Cathy of sorts.
It was either Cathy or like another just woman who died over there or something. Right. You know what I mean? Right. It's hard to tell if she left him or if she died.
Right. And so then because I feel like a big part of Samuel's, connection to Adam for himself is seeing himself in Adam, and at least little parts of it, and saying like is being able to say, I've been through this before and I can help you. And so we get a little bit of, Samuel's past revealed here even further. And I think that it is dangerous to, play out too many things in your mind of what could have been, and like the word fantasizing has been like very like sexually hijacked, right?
Yeah.
And Samuel is speaking to that in this case as well. But also but he's not just speaking that, he's speaking also to just, the what could have been, the one who got away. What would my life be like now if I had done this, that, or the other? And I think lots of people struggle with that. And, thinking about,
I think that can be deadly to a marriage.
Deadly to a marriage and deadly to just a man's soul. Like to be like, even, I should have, one very common one, lots of guys hold on to. You talk to like a 80-year-old guy who's like, I regret I never served in the military.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Like that one's that's like, that one like is like things like that, thinking of where my life could be, or, man, just regretting, and you can even, in some cases, like as you find yourself getting into like, as a marriage progresses and a family grows and you've now like lost all of your autonomy as a man, you're like, there's a thing for you to fantasize, just like, I want to just be a bar hopping on my motorcycle, riding through the night, just like, like the flicking cigarettes or whatever like that. Like you can have these like sort of like,
I want to be lonely.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's like, and that's, part of fantasizing is that it is fantasy.
Yeah.
It's like, and so you take the good part, like you have these what could have been, what's nots, and then like to your joke just now, which is like, ultimately, that's not what you want.
Ultimately, that man's crying alone in a cockroach infested motel.
Exactly.
Feeling guilt about leaving his children.
Exactly. Or having never had any of that, you know? And we'll see regrets like that in other characters as we get in like part 4, and like this whole concept of Timshel too. I think like while you were saying that the translation has been stretched in this particular verse, I think that it is the condition of man and his free will and his manifest destiny, part of that too. It's like there's destiny is just, there's nothing you can do about it. That's what you're destined for.
Yeah.
Manifest destiny is a potential future that you have to get to.
Yeah.
And, and manifest destiny being like, a common theme of writers in this time too. So, and obviously that's like a whole, whatever, take your junior year lit class. You talk about that for like, for 18 weeks, but
sure.
We get into this thing where we're calling the choice, Timshel, this thing that is, you have to choose. And like, just like how Samuel chose to make his life a one way, and Will is choosing to make his life another way, like we have these choices that come up, and it goes beyond good and evil, and to also just like, you have the free will to choose your life. Because Steinbeck throughout the book has also been speaking of, these past times, these future times that we're moving into or out of. And you have characters like Will, who is, who's going after making the money. And then you have guys like Samuel, who's going after making a living, and that's a concept we'll get heavily into in part 4, is this thing that is, you can, make money, or you can make a living, or make a life, type of thing. And so the Timshel concept has been running through this entire book so far. And if you go for a reread, you'll pick up on it throughout the first 2 parts. But then it's in part 3 that it's revealed more clearly to us, and we get to see it throughout the rest of the story.
Yeah, and I think, to anyone out there who's not a believer or whatever, or I don't know. I do think, like, not, again, this is not me trying to like recruit anyone, but like, if you want to understand Christianity, this is Christianity. I think it's very like closest core is like, a lot of people I know get wrapped up in a lot of other stuff, but like, I think the clearest argument for like Christianity and like what it believes is like, you have a choice. You can choose to accept like you can choose to accept forgiveness. You can choose to accept, Jesus as your Lord and Savior, or you can choose not to. But there is no like, you go to hell because like, there's no like, I know there's a lot of philosophies here, right? But I'm not saying like, what I'm saying is, it's not like you go to hell regardless of what you want to do. You don't go to hell regardless of what you want to do. I don't like, I'm saying like, it is a manifested destiny of like, based on what you choose and want to do. That choice is what you will manifest in this life. And thou mayest choose to overcome sin. Thou mayest choose to accept these things. Those are the predications for like everything in the Old Testament and the New Testament. And like, it ultimately boils down to like, over and over in Jesus's teachings, like the most simplest you can make it is like, ask and it will be given to you. Like, seek and you will find. Knock and the door shall be open. And he just boils it down like, if you choose me, then this is what you receive. If you do not choose me. And I think so many people think like, well, it's not a choice. It's like, I'm born and I'm either going to hell or I'm not, or I have no control over my sinful nature. And so like, I think like, that's like, I don't know, like to me, it's like, it was one of those moments of like, wow, this is a very life-changing book, because I feel like the perspective is very beautiful. The examples are very like real and relatable. And it helps me actively just continually think about my faith and my walk with God. And am I choosing to honor God and walk with God today? And am I making it an active choice, or am I passively just letting sin slip into my life?
Right.
What were you going to say on that?
Yeah. And I'd say like, it's all and then there is a whole nother deeper layer to what you're saying also, which is and I know you believe this, but is the way that this is not to be confused. I just clarify what you're saying is like, not to be confused with binary action results in your eternal standing. Yes. Because it's not 2 scales, right? No. That we're walking through now. There, and so if we get into like a conversation about like following Christ and salvation, there is, like, I think there's a choice. Like, there's not like, you know, there's, and that comes with lots of, like, what you're saying is like, you continually have to put forward that there is effort to be put forward to continue to follow. But like, it's not all added up on the last day. But then, but to bring that to like us here and now, mankind on the earth today, is we live in your life as a physical being is binary in that.
Yeah.
Your choices. It's one or the way. Like,
it is always going to be one or the other.
And your like your outcome in life, is going to be, your outcome in this life will be heavily influenced by those binary choices, right?
Yep.
You're right. Because I'm speaking to, and I agree. It's like there's
I'm just hype man in it, bro.
Yeah, because there's like, we believe in a grace factor too, which is also interesting too, because in this, it's even spoken to here. Lee speaks to it where he says, he says, for in his weakness and in filth and his in the murder of his brother, he still has the great choice. So it's like, there's even some, you could speak to a grace aspect here too, of like, going forward, you still get the choice. So even after this, that, and the others happened, and he just named all these things that should, discount you from a future.
Well, I think again, not going to spoil it before, in case no one's at part 4 yet who's listening to this, but the ultimate example of Timshel in the book is a choice of grace and mercy.
Right.
It's not a, do I sin or do I not sin? It's, do I forgive? Do I pardon? Do I bless?
Right.
And so, that said, I do love this, like, just like jaw dropped Samuel moment here, where Samuel's just talking about his old ass horse.
Yeah.
Doxology. And he's got flat hoofed. He's got a mean temper. He'd probably kick Samuel after all these years of Samuel nursing him. Samuel grounds up meal. He can't even feed Doxology straw because Doxology ain't got no teeth. And so Samuel has to feed him by hand, just ground up meal for him to like gum on and suck down. And still this horse is alive at 33, kicking, pulling Samuel along. And Adam makes this comment of like, why not just put the horse out of its misery? And Samuel's like, really, Adam? You'd kill this animal? If this was your horse, you kill it? And Adam's like, yeah, I would have killed it years ago.
Yeah.
Like, look at its miserable existence. And Samuel's like, well, it doesn't seem all that miserable to him. And like, you could see, the weird thing is like, Lee's our surrogate here. Lee is like seeing what's happening and starting to feel the temperature rise because he knows what Samuel's alluding to, and like Adam's just unaware. And what Samuel's saying is, Adam, you are this horse.
Yeah.
You are living a miserable existence for the last 10 years. And anyone in their right mind would think someone put this man out of his misery because he's never going to do anything. He's never going to do anything with his farm, his money. He's not a father. He's never moving on. And so Samuel says, Adam, suppose I had medicine that could heal you, but it could either kill you or heal you. It's a flip of a coin. Would you take it? And Adam's like, well, what kind of medicine? He's like, no, it doesn't matter what kind. It's just medicine that will either kill you or heal you. Would you want it? And Adam's like, well, I guess if I was sick, I'd want it. Yeah. And so Samuel gives him the medicine. And Samuel kind of, quote unquote, puts him out of his misery, right? Because Samuel's like, it could kill you. It could kill Adam in his idea. He's like, this could be the thing I say that drives Adam to take his own life or, just do something reckless that gets him killed. And he says, Adam, Cathy is chief whore of a whorehouse that is the most depraved whorehouse
of all time.
Like, everyone knows in California that east of California, there's not a more depraved whorehouse. And she literally takes pieces from the whores who serve her so they can never be anything again but whores. And, it's just like Adam is angry, gobsmacked. He's like, Lee. And Lee says this hilarious line because it's not like said Adam raises his hands to Lee, but Lee says, I'm not the solution. I'm not the medicine. Like, because he's afraid Adam's going to start wailing on him to like vent. And like, it's just one of those hilarious moments. But like, he's like, Lee, did you know about these? He's like, I did. And I wish I should have told you. And so Adam storms off angry, just literally running over a hill in the dark.
Yeah.
And Samuel's like, you know, Lee, if you had not told me about Timshel, I would have chosen to sin. I would have chosen to let sin fester, and I would have chosen to shirk away from the goodness of telling Adam the truth he deserves. But because of what you said in that philosophy, it's stirred in me. And just like you said, when those old crippled Chinese philosophers
opium-ridden
heard of this, it gave them life. Oh, even in my old age, I may live and win over sin. Even at the end of my life, I can still choose to have victory over sin, to choose to be good. Samuel says, it's done the same thing to me. And I go off now like happy man.
This is his final great act.
Yeah, it's his final great act. And he waves off to Lee as Lee waves off to him. And, you know, they part. In the next chapter, we find like, it's what, 2 years?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Samuel's died. And Adam is going to the funeral on a train. It's just interesting because now we get like Adam's confrontation with Cathy. And I think there's a really good parallel here that I just want to note on too. We see that Cathy repeatedly is incapable of self-control when it comes to like people she can't get her hooks into, and when she's drinking. And when she has alcohol, she loses self-control. She's overcome by fear of rejection, fear of not being able to manipulate someone, anger at them for not like submitting to her, anger to their resistance, anger to the good in them. And she releases the meanest and nastiest version of herself. And even though, you know, I try like to shirk away from drunkenness and encourage others to not get drunk, you know, when Adam is drunk, when Adam's drinking, we see here that Adam is actually brave in his intoxication.
Little liquid courage.
Yeah,
there.
the more he drinks, he's not only like he's brave, but he's in control. He's cool-headed. He's not afraid of harm to himself. And in fact, he's not retaliatory. He's gentle and patient regardless of kind of the gravity of a situation. In that he seizes control of situations in himself while under the influence of alcohol, and he chooses to overcome sin in this moment. And it's like the most like, it's the furthest you can get from Cathy. And it's both of them under the effects of alcohol. That gives them like a total different personality. And I do think it's like that, like it is very intentional, right? I think it's a very intentional Cain Abel moment of like the playing field is level. No one can be like, well, the liquor made me angry. The liquor made me good. It's like
it revealed your
it revealed exactly who you are. And it opened your eyes. Cathy sees, oh, this is a different Adam. I can't control him. Adam sees like, oh, this is Cathy. This is what the world sees and what I couldn't see. Go ahead before I move on to Timshel parts.
Yeah, and so, you know, in this chapter we have the and I called it Samuel's deadly remedy. You know, is because this could kill you, but it might be what you need. It's like chemo. Like this is like
to kill a cancer.
Yeah, it's like this is going to attack a thing inside of you and kill it, and you might not come out the other side. Yeah, and you have to go through this crucible. And so, you know, Samuel gives this gift to Adam, and Adam coming into town for the funeral, and you know, and all this, he gets, you know, he doesn't go home, and it had to have been brewing in him ever since he found out. Oh, you know,
and you know, like the dread when he's like gets to that bar. Like I don't think he was excited or optimistic or hopeful at all walking from Samuel's funeral. You know what I mean? Like he's leaving
Mhm.
Samuel's funeral, and I think he's like, I don't have the courage.
Yeah, he's lost his only counsel, and he's just, and to find out too the fact that like this person who, while he hadn't gotten over her for the last decade, to find out she's only a couple miles away this whole time,
Yeah,
just like brutal, and the life she's living too, and so.
yeah. It's one thing to be like, I'm sorry to tell you this, man, but she came on down on hard times and she's a whore now. It's
Right.
like, no, she's like,
She's up the
she's
road.
Donkey Kong of whores.
Yeah.
She's running the show. Like,
Yep. And she's right over the hill.
yeah.
And so the this deadly remedy that Samuel gave him now Adam has to decide if he's going to live or die from it. And he goes forward and he goes to see her, for the first time in so long, and she reveals herself to him completely. And because we saw in part 2 where Adam really really into part 1 and through part 2 where Adam had made this fake version of her, and the false things she'd put forward he had eaten up, and he just saw her as this ultimate thing on a huge pedestal, the greatest, and it was his pinnacle of a woman. And now he goes into this depraved place and sees her for what she is, and she's just like this spitting, angry, vile person. And this quote here is, it says, he was a liar and a hypocrite too. And as she spat out her words, that's what I hate. The liars. They're all liars. That's what it is. I love to show them up. I love to rub their noses in their own nastiness. And Adam's brows went up. Do you mean that in the whole world there's only evil and folly? And she says, that's exactly what I mean. And in this moment, Adam has this epiphany and shift where the glass is shattered on his version of who she is. He finds freedom, in this, and in this epiphany, he responds to her later on. He says, you hate the good in them. And he finally realizes this person and who she is and her, her key essence. And when he says this, you hate the good in them, it's as if he has concluded his reality, his forming his reality and understanding of the real situation, what had happened, what was going on. And he's able to leave, surviving the deadly remedy. And he even gets physically jacked up.
No, that's right. Yeah. Like, I think that was also part of the physical thing. I don't think, Samuel foresaw that.
Right.
But like, that's certainly part of it. I realized in retrospect, I was like, oh, like Samuel, maybe he did realize it. And he was like, man, she's queen whore and she's got some like muscle.
Yeah.
That is probably going to jack him up if he goes in there too hot-headed. And Adam gets kicked and beat, but like even the dude beating him was like, I don't know, man. This guy seems like he's really not a threat at all. Like, what do you want me to do? And it was just like one of those things that like, it was just like to see the henchman overcome by like Adam's character and choosing to make the best out of Timshel, But yeah, it's a beautiful scene. It left me though, man, it felt just like to me when Charles is chasing Adam down. Like I like legit was wondering if Adam was about to get bit by the viper and die,
pulled back in,
and like die holding it. You know what I mean? Like I was like, dude, she's so cunning. And like when he's like, I'm not drinking this until you drink all of it. I was like, good, because she could have poisoned it.
Oh yeah.
And then like I know she mentioned she had this syringe of not morphine but something else that she could have used to inject him. And then she just could have her muscles stomp his head in, right? Yeah. And I was just like, God, is Adam gonna die here?
Yeah.
What a martyr. That'd be insane. Yeah. And like, what if she killed him and the boys never know that like their evil, wicked mother killed their good father?
Right. And we had, and this scene was also just, like skin crawling where she'd revealed herself to Faye and kind of the nastiness of what she does. But then this is when we see
all the pictures,
the full nastiness. Yeah, where she's, she has all these pictures of, depraved acts and using them as blackmail.
Senators.
And all these people, and that's how she's making her money, but
priest.
I had this thought of, like, she mentioned once they come in here and they've had a bit of what we have to offer, like, they can never leave.
They can never leave.
And I was thinking of the song Hotel California when she said that. I was like, this is the Hotel California.
Yeah, dude, you could check in, but you're never allowed to walk out.
Yep. And you're just in there, and you're just in this eternal suffering.
Well, we see that the only person who probably got her hooks out of them is Adam.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one else who gets Cathy's hooks out of them
once they're in.
Yeah. Like, even Charles, it's hard to tell. Did he leave? Which we're going to talk about here in a minute. But he left half of his inheritance to Adam, to Cathy. And was that insult? What a weird way of insulting Cathy.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was just his concern. Like, part of me wonders if he was like legit worried. Like, what if my boy, the only offspring I have, is with Cathy? I should make sure that some money goes that direction. Or did like a part of obligation and guilt and evil just sit in him, and he's like, I should give her some. Yeah.
Or was it his final act of like that cruel punishment
to
his brother?
You think it was out of cruelty to Adam for going?
Or like, just how we see Cal and Charles both, like, they can't help but do something mean to their brother. Just how, like, Charles' final act in person with his brother was to sleep with his new wife. Like, and he couldn't deny that. And like, in the same sense of like,
that still hurts me so
like,
much.
Brooding over the years of like, all right, you picked that lady, I'm giving half to her. Like, Charles knew they weren't together. Like, maybe he didn't know for a fact they weren't together anymore, but in his hearts of hearts, he's like, yeah, that's not lasting. And I'm sending it to her too, because he picked that. He picked her, and I'm sending it to both of them. And we don't know. It's left to the,
I just don't want to. I want to believe in Charles having an opportunity for Timshel. You know what I mean? It's like, because I do see earlier, right? Charles loves Adam,
right?
And it's just so hard to imagine like that last spiteful moment. But I don't know. Anyways, moving forward. Adam survives that encounter with Cathy, right? And we get like, some examples of Timshel from him, showing grace, showing forgiveness. He doesn't even say a mean thing to Cathy.
No, he's just stone cold.
He doesn't say, you're a whore, your sons would never love you, thank God you're gone because those boys have a better life than you could ever provide. He doesn't say anything jaded, anything like hurtful. It's all very much like, now I can forget you.
Yeah.
And I think that it was insane, bro. When he said that, I was like pumping my fist to the car.
Yeah.
Because we've all been there. If you're a dude and you haven't been there, I hate to tell you, son, you're going to be there one day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
like, there's a girl one day, whether it's your first crush in middle school, elementary school, or like that chick who like breaks your heart in college, or, God forbid, but like I hear about it all the time with divorces and stuff. Like, there is going to be a day where you're going to think of a woman and you're going to be like, I can finally forget her and move on.
And I think it goes like also even to be like close friends. Like, like you
could definitely happen with the bros.
You unwisely chose, poor friends, and like, or whatever it is, guys and girls, romantic relationships, brotherly relationships. And then you find yourself going, I do not need that. And this was painful, but now that you've revealed your true self, I am free.
Yep. Moving on. I do think it's interesting. The next chapter is really just Adam buying a car and the contrast between Adam and Will, and how Adam thinks Will's mourning his dad. He's not. He's just thinking business. And it's kind of interesting. I just thought, I was like, you never know. Like sometimes your friends and the people you went to go see and sat with to just speak a little bit of truth in their lives. Sometimes that little bit of truth will make them more mournful and appreciative of you than your own family.
Right.
Just because they will realize they have a better realization of like, I should have made more time with them because of how, impactful they were. Adam, confides in Lee saying he wants to, spend more time with his boys. I think Timshel moment. He's like,
because he says, I've been a horrible father.
Yeah. I've been my own.
Yeah. And he realizes he's been just like Cyrus.
Yep.
In his own way.
Yeah. And then Lee says, I want to leave to go be free and have my own bookstore. And like, Adam makes a very honest, but I don't think necessarily like mean spirit or anything like that, but he makes a very honest statement. He's like, I wish you were a slave. For a moment there, I found myself wishing you were a slave so I could deny you your right to leave. But he's like, it's kind of been joking because he's like, of course you can go whenever you want. Like you've always had the ability to go whenever you want. And then Lee says this super sweet statement. He's like, I'm not as motivated as I once was to leave, and I will stay for a little while to help you get acquainted with the boys. But don't make me feel needed, Adam, because it's very hard for a man to leave from a place where he feels needed. And, I thought that was like a very sweet statement of like, don't take advantage of me, because if you make me feel needed here, I'll stay.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, he's like
revealing too.
Yeah. He's like betraying his hand. Then, chapter 27, we kind of get again into like really developing characters of Aaron and Cal. They're hunting this rabbit, and we start seeing Cal slipping in. He's starting to like manipulate and possess his brother with either promises of rewards or the idea of approval and appreciation from people who it matters from. He tells his brother like, well, we can tell Father and Lee that your arrow got it, or you're the one who got the rabbit. It's like, why would he say that if he isn't like, the reason he's saying this because he's aware of his brother's desire for approval, and he's aware that his brother currently is in his shadow.
And another little part of that is a power play.
Like, you're in my pocket, and I'll reveal that it wasn't you.
Yeah,
one day.
Where it's just like,
I could hold it over you.
Even though everybody else will celebrate you, you'll know it was me.
Yeah, and I could possess you.
Yeah.
And like, I think that's like the danger. Like, we see immediately he's already he's demonstrating Cathy of like, I want to possess you, I want to control you, you will do what I say. But then we see Aaron's inability to accept that his loved ones can commit evil, or are maybe not just absolutely virtuous good. It's the same thing that plagued Adam, I think, and he has this moment when, Abra and Cal kind of confront Aaron about his mom, and Cal's like, well, what if mom's not dead? What if dad lied? What if mom is alive and she ran away? And like, Aaron's just like, does not compute. And, I think that is to be said. I think this is kind of something Steinbeck doesn't outright say, but I think definitely is repeated on in this book. That is just as much of a choice as Cal's is to not heed to Timshel. Like, that is a choice to choose to deny what is good. Which we find out later on through Lee's story is like, the truth, in the truth there is beauty and goodness, even if it is what does he say? Not dangerous. It doesn't say horrid, maybe a terrible beauty. And it's like that idea of like, if you refuse to acknowledge the truth or tell someone the truth, you are denying the ability to learn and improve from the truth. If you give someone just falsities, there's nothing that can truly be improved, because it's being improved based off of a false premise, which invalidates, anything coming after it. And so I think, like, I don't know, I'm open to you disagreeing, but I do think like Aaron's inability to like confront and deal with this is just like as dangerous as Adam's, which ultimately is just as actually like quote unquote sinful, as like choosing to do the evil thing.
Yeah. And I think, where I was describing Aaron before, like I spoke to his like naivety, and that's a downfall, and like there's like, being innocent is not a sin, quote unquote. And like, like being naive is not, or being innocent is not a crime.
Mm-hmm.
Being naive you have the onus is now on you in some ways, because a naive person has chosen now to not see the facts in front of them.
Yeah.
The innocent person, there's nothing one way or the other for them, just to make a choice.
I agree.
And so
it's kind of like the ultimate example. This is so extreme, but the ultimate example is like Holocaust denialism, right? It's like,
right.
Is there any benefit to that? Like, I think most people would agree that's a sinful thing, right?
Right.
Like you're doing something very harmful to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like, this is of course the most like personal, simple version of this, right?
Right. And so I agree that, they both are, making their choices and this is where, Steinbeck's Cain and Abel's aren't as cut and dry as biblical Cain and Abel's.
Yeah.
He puts more flesh and nuance to the characters, and each of them has more, makes good choices, makes bad choices. Whereas like, the account, and the biblical account is just a couple verses, fairly cut and dry.
14 verses.
Right.
And they're every man's story.
And so this is where, Cal wondering about the truth isn't his downfall. It's, it comes later in this chapter where he is tricking his brother into, with the love letter for Abra and all that. And he's not, he sets them both up, and then he's like Lucy with the football from the Peanuts.
Yeah.
He's holding the football, and what brings him great joy is pulling the football out.
Yeah. It's so sinister.
Yeah.
It's squirming. He enjoys watching squirming.
Like Charlie Brown didn't even ask him to hold the football. So it's like, hey, come over here.
Well, come
kick this ball,
And like, just to get to that part too, Abra chooses to be good to the boys when she sees an opportunity to be good, rather than like, I can't tell you this, to me, when I see the boys struggling with like no identity of a mother, and they don't even know like what it's like. They're like, I don't know. I don't remember.
They're
right?
kind of like Lost Boys in Peter Pan.
Yeah. But it's like, it is one of those things of like, when people would like, some kids would ask me, they're like, wait, where's your dad? And I'd be like,
right.
And, eventually like I came to like answers for that question. Right. But like initially I was like, I don't know. And they're like, well, what's that like? I'm like, I don't know.
Right.
It's living.
Yeah,
it's
no
like life.
paradigm for it.
Yeah. It's but like they're like, I remember like the insecurity about answering that question when someone's like, do you have a dad? Is like, okay, now I have to surrender control. I have to either make up a lie and say, yeah, I do. He's just on vacation. Or I have I have to submit to the truth and say, no, I don't. Which gives them full control to either be kind or to make fun of.
Right.
To Timshel, they now have the choice to be like, oh, well, okay.
Right. Yeah.
You want to play tag? You want to play, whatever? Yeah. Or they could be like, you don't have a dad?
Yeah.
And like whatever that evolves it to, which I can't repeat those words here.
Right.
But because
also,
we'd get canceled.
And also like something about revealing the truth that way and putting the onus on that person is actually disarmed. And for many people, it's so disarming, right? It's like,
I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's like here's a little example of it. In college, we'd ride around in the car and ride around campus. We roll down the windows. We see a freshman, roll down the windows. The guy in the back seat yells out,
"Freshman."
No, well, we do that too, but this one was, hey, excuse me, do you know where the library is?
Oh yeah, that was a great one.
And they'd say, that way? And he'd go, nerd.
Yeah.
And then he'd drive off.
Classic.
Right. And so now this is like maybe 2 or 3 years later. So now we're like seniors and or out of college. And we're driving by campus. And it's kind of like old time's sake, like my buddy in the back just rolls down the window.
Yeah.
And like he's like, what's he doing? And it's like he sees this guy, and it's not a freshman. It is a
like a 30-year-old man in college.
No, but he's not in college. He's like briefcase, briefs, like dress shirt, walking like nice watch, walking down the road. Hey, excuse me, where's the library at? And the gentleman turns and just goes, you just take a right down Oak and then you'll find it on your left. And then my buddy just opens his mouth and he goes, thank you, sir. And then we drive off. And so this, like, in the moment of this guy's like just authentic, genuine answering the question,
disarmed.
He disarmed the bully. You know,
Yeah.
It was like, if I do this, I can't do this.
I'm an idiot.
You know, right here. You know, it's like, and so that little story came in my head. But that's you can disarm with the truth in that way.
Timshel. But anyways, yeah. It's so I think like we see Abra choose. You know, she chooses to be good rather than harass the boys, rather than tease them, rather be like, well, she could have run away and she could be a whore, or be like, I heard about a whore who left her boys and husband, and it could be your mom.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And then you're at the age too where you're like, what's a whore?
You're like, I hear that word and I don't get it. Yeah. But she instead chooses Timshel. Thou mayest be now a mother to the motherless. And Cal again fails his Timshel opportunity and weaponizes this.
Yeah.
He sees her desires and he sees her kindness and he sees her vulnerability now in choosing to be kind to them in their own. And he literally just does the thing kids do where like you're like just hanging out at like a friend's house, like at their like graduation party, and they have that like one nephew or cousin, and he's just like looking at you, and he's just like in that weird button-up shirt that's too tight, and he's got like a little party hat on, and he's just like, he knows, he's like, if I look at people long enough, adults get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And like that's just what Cal's doing, you know what I mean? And like it's awful. It's like, it's such a mean thing to do.
Yep, and it's his any jealousy of his brother. A little Cain and Abel action there, where he's like the just jealousy of his brother, the favor of Abra and him, and they're kind of hitting it off, and then he had to pull the football.
Yeah, and he's like, I immediately knew that, like, he knew Abra preferred Aaron because everyone always prefers Aaron with his nice light blonde hair and his boyish looks. Anyways, going forward, Adam takes a genuine interest in engaging with his children. Excuse me, but he lies about Cathy to them. And then Lee tells us his origin story. So, you know, and again, I don't want to get too wrapped down in this, but and we could talk about whatever you want, Pat. Like, I think Lee's origin story is very powerful. But like, I think just again, Timshel examples. Like I said, there are 15 of them here or so, but like, Adam lies to the children about their mother. According to what we've seen, what we learned from Lee's story, what we've seen from Samuel, this is Adam failing to thou mayest. He's choosing to sin by lying to the children about their mother rather than revealing the truth. And a lot of people got opinions about this. The internet's full of it. But we also see Adam choosing to fulfill Timshel, and thou mayest choose not to sin by taking an active, uncomfortable step into engaging the boys and choosing to be a father now and be present. And so it's kind of weird. It's like, I mean, is it the wrong choice? Personally, you know, we have the hindsight 2020 bias, but like, you know, in the moment, I remember thinking like, this was the moment. This is the moment you should have been honest with them about their mother. You didn't have to say she was a whore, but you should have been like, you know what? She did leave. I don't think she's dead. And you can't go see her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's like the opportunity here.
Yeah, and the thing going on here too is also the fact that Adam, for the past 10 years, for his children's lifetime, has not had to confront anything one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, and this happens like a petty prime example. This is My Name is Earl. Remember that show?
I loved that show.
So, the whole premise of the show is he's redeeming all the bad things he ever did, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's going and trying to redeem. Everything he messed up, he's trying to go fix.
Mm-hmm.
But then it always leads to more chaos in his life.
Yeah, he almost always makes it worse.
Right. And so this is that in Adam. Adam has been living in nothingness, and now that he's stepping out into being something and living in the light, but that means all the other stuff has to come to light too. But now but you will be confronted with it now.
Mm-hmm.
You would never been confronted with it if you just were the passive father who never spoke about anything ever.
Yeah, it's like the concept of like, oh, father, you're approaching me? You're
Mm-hmm.
engaging with me?
Mm-hmm.
You are approachable now? Well, I've always had this question about mother.
Exactly.
And it's just like, of course they're going to ask you the first thing that's on their priority list.
Exactly. And so now he's, as he's trying to, he's free of this lady, he's moving forward, he's excited about life, he wants to engage his kids, but it's hard. And that's that. I think, I don't know if Steinbeck was thinking into that or not, but it's just like, that is true. I think for people who are trying to, all right, now we're moving in the right direction here. Okay, but just because you took that one step, it's going to keep coming. And like the truth comes out. That phrase has been around for a while for a reason. And in this case too, he delays it, and delaying it becomes festering and becomes astronomical. And so like he is making the right choices, and at the same time, those right choices are bringing him to a place where he has to continue to make the right choices, and sometimes he's not. And he has to, he falls back into having to lie or tell these stories. And, the Lee's origin story, it kind of came out of nowhere to me. You know?
Dude, that was way left field.
Yeah.
But I do understand, like, I think it is Timshel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's both sides. And I think the lesson of it, like what he says his father said and speaking about it, is super powerful. Like Lee would beg, can you just tell a story this time where you and mother, you get to the mountain, you get to the upper meadows, and she lives, and I'm born, and it becomes good. And his father would say, there's no beauty in that. There's no beauty in the lies. The beauty is in the truth, even if it's a terrible beauty, because it allows us to learn. And so like, yeah, it's way out of left field, especially like a first-time listener or reader for it. But it's also like, I understand like there has to be this absolute spectrum depravity, because ultimately, like if we're really thinking about it, like we're talking about like, I think the most closest approximation is like you've sinned all your life as a bad man, you're on your deathbed, and you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. How can you be saved?
Right.
And it's like you do the most depraved thing, or your reader. All right, I'm John Steinbeck. I know my readers listening to Timshel, the concept of Timshel. We're getting some examples, and the reader's like, yeah, but come on, there's people who rape and murder. Like, we really think they're capable of redeeming themselves and choosing good? They're just always going to be the most evil, despicable things.
Right.
And, like, I think this is Steinbeck's way of being like, here's a story of a character in the book who shows the full spectrum.
Right.
Like, full depravity to full redemption. And is there a fault in Lee? Can you think of one thing Lee did wrong? I can't think of one thing Lee did wrong.
Yeah, he's the steady thing in there, and he is the result of that depravity redeemed.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like if the most depraved people can be redeemed and like raise someone to be as good as Lee, then everyone can still choose, no matter how depraved they've been.
Right.
That's the way I kind of see that story. But
no, yeah, and I think it's a when Steinbeck does these asides in his book, or also does these these stories. It's this little short story within the novel.
Yeah.
It's chocked full of what he's trying to tell you, and for Lee and because when you're reading that story and you're listening to the whole thing, as the reader, you are Lee asking the dad to tell the fake version.
Yeah.
You're like, because you hear about they're out building a cabin in the woods and they're going to escape and be a family together. And you're like, yeah, that's going to happen. I want that to happen. But like, you should know it's not going to happen. But you're wanting it to up until the moment it doesn't.
It went real Blood Meridian.
It did. It definitely did.
Like, it was full send.
For sure. And another example of Adam, as he's trying to, my name is Earl it forward, when he, in the same chapter, he's engaging his brother to come out with him. Mm-hmm. But there's cost and consequence for your past and for lost time.
Yeah. I mean, but we do see, I think the most powerful thing is like Adam chooses to operate in Timshel. Mm-hmm. He chooses to be good. Mm-hmm. And he extends not just forgiveness, but he outright says, I love you. Mm-hmm. I've never been mad at you. Mm-hmm. I've always forgiven everything. I don't want you to think for a moment there's anything I'm mad about today. Mm-hmm. Please come out and visit.
Yeah.
I love you. I love you. Right? Like he really emphasizes it.
Yeah. But then at the same time, like, does that matter if Charles never got to see it?
I mean, it does, I think to the intention.
I think it does too. But then there's also like the
it's too late.
There's still a part of you that's like a hole in your heart of like, oh.
Yeah.
And so Adam got to that place, but he didn't actually get to give it to his brother.
Yeah. Because next chapter ish. Is it the next chapter or is it a couple chapters later?
It's the next chapter.
Yeah. We find out that like Charles never writes back. Why? Because he died a while ago and they just didn't have a next of kin address to reach out to Adam about it. But and it's sad, because we can see that like Adam's really distraught over it, and this idea of like, just when I've been waking up and realizing the man I should have been and realizing my brother's warning, and I should have had my brother here all along to help be a part of these boys' lives. It's just like that realization comes with some bitterness. But I do think like the main part of these chapters though, 29 and 30 and all that, is like this quote here that you pulled out. Cal saw the confusion and helplessness on Aaron's face and felt his power, and it made him glad. And I kind of want you to talk about that, why you grabbed that one. Because, of course, another example of Timshel, another example of Cal choosing to sin, but having an epiphany in the midst of the sin.
Yeah. And and one thing, the one thing also that I talked about briefly last time too was like the what's in your nature piece. Because there's a couple times it comes out throughout the book where people just say like, oh, it's in his nature. Or like, for instance, in Cathy's nature, she is unchangeable. So like Steinbeck is dealing with something too where people have a choice, but at the same time, they have their own nature that they're set in. Meanness, being passive, being kind, being cruel, merciful, being ambitious, or being content. Steinbeck says these people have an innate nature within them, but at the same time, they have a choice. And so, this is where Cal's, inner self is he's
perhaps the innate goodness recognizes wickedness.
Yeah. Or like his innateness too is also just like he didn't choose to be happy about this interaction, but he felt it in himself, this power. Like, he saw himself elevated above Aaron because of this confusion, helplessness. He felt powerful. And then it made him glad. And there was no like, in this instance, there wasn't even there's not necessarily a choice, but this is just Cal's nature, of which he has to rebel against with his choices, right? And because what's happening here is the kids are sent off to bed, and Cal says, I'm gonna go out there and listen to because they're talking about something important. I don't know what it is. They're talking about something important, And so And Aaron's like, you can't do that. You're breaking Dad's trust. And he's like, I'm doing it anyways. And so that's where he says he saw the confusion and helplessness in Aaron's face, and he felt powerful, and it made him glad. So in his innateness, that's what he felt. He goes out there and he eavesdrops, and he learns of the money and of Cathy. So he hears about who his mom is. And while he's sitting in the shadows listening to Lee and Adam talk, he learns the truth about his mother.
Mm-hmm.
And he learns about it cheaply. The truth wasn't given to him. The truth, he took it, And so there's something about that too, where it's like it's bastardized in the way that he attained this. And going forward throughout the book, he struggles with this because he has the knowledge. He now has the knowledge of the tree. And he has to,
and it's not just the knowledge of the tree, but it's like the knowledge to punish or free Aaron,
right?
In the way it's given,
right? And the way it was attained, in the manner that it was, he is now, he's trapped by it now. He's not freed by the truth in this instance. He's actually caged by it. And after this encounter, he then, is out by himself. And this is the next quote where he says, "Dear Lord, let me be like Aaron." He says, "Don't make me mean. I don't want to be. I don't want to be mean. I don't want to be lonely." And so we see where in that first thing we quoted was his nature. And then also we see now he's making the choice too. He's like, I don't want to be that way. I don't want to be like that.
Yeah, his cognition.
And it also is hearkening back to in part 2 where we were talking about like the story of Cain and Abel is the story of man. And then as Lee breaks it down, as he gets from one thing to the next, he boils it down to man has a fear of rejection. And his Cal sees Aaron as accepted, and he doesn't want to be mean. And his final thought there is, I don't want to be lonely. And so it is a fear of rejection, which like Steinbeck's writing back to.
Which we do see only revealed when Cathy's drunk. Is that's her like fear.
Also hers,
yeah. Which part of me was wondering, I was philosophizing here. I was like, wonder if Cathy is considered incomplete. Just because like she didn't have, and like Charles maybe is considered incomplete. They don't say it, right? They don't. They never say like Charles wasn't human. But I just wonder if like Cal is only aware of this because he has both Cathy and Charles in him. But the second thought too was, I wonder if Cathy would have had a moment like this in her childhood if she had had a sibling. Like, what if she had seen, like, the night she was getting ready to burn that house down and kill her parents, she had seen her sibling sister's eyes just full of fear, and she had just been moved. Or, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or, like, just something. Because it is one of those things of, like, I don't know. It's interesting. And it is interesting because, like, I think, like, this prayer, too, comes after Cal hears that Lee is planning on leaving.
Yeah.
And it comes out of the fear of, like, well, if Lee leaves, Aaron will just be Dad's favorite, and I will be alone. I'll have no one.
Yeah.
Because Lee at least gives me, like, time and attention. And so, all that said, it did make me think for a while, like, Cathy now is supposed to be beyond redemption. Like, she really is supposed to be beyond redemption. Maybe, you know, at this point when I was reading it, I was like, maybe something her children could do. Maybe something the boys do redeems her. But I doubt it.
Right.
However, and I doubt it not because I don't believe people can be redeemed. I doubt it because I doubt that's Steinbeck's intentions.
The way,
like
the character's been set up.
Yeah, Cathy serves a purpose. And I think like here though, I was like, oh dude, but like if Cathy had a little sister, little brother, like Cathy might have never come to exist in what she is now, you know? She might have just become a normal person in society. Maybe a little bit of like a not nice lady, but like for the most part decent. But anyways, yeah, so that was kind of what I got out of this chapter, you know, like Cal is a full person and we're seeing sides of both Charles and Cathy in him, but we're also seeing like some kind of cognitive recognition between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see that Adam is, I just kind of thought this was interesting, like Adam is forced to live out Samuel's final proposition and challenge when he hears Charles is dead. He must now accept that the only family he's got left is these boys and Lee.
Yeah.
And he has to choose to like live out life with them rather than live in the past. And like, I can't remember exactly how it was phrased in the book, but it was pretty much like almost a callback to the couple chapters ago when Samuel's like, you got to move on. You got to let those memories get replaced. And like Adam literally has that epiphany moment with his boys and Lee. And he's like, oh, this is my whole world. These three dudes. It's me and the boys.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like, I thought that was really key. Good callback.
For sure. And one thing I can't remember two things. One would be if we talked about this on the last time we spoke, but and I don't remember if it's in the first encounter he has with Cathy or in the second one that we're about to get to, that she says she tells him that she slept with Charles. I think it's in that first one.
It's in the first one.
Yeah. So that's one thing we don't. So she also reveals to him that, you know, she slept with his brother. And he takes it rather well. And what's interesting too is he leaves there too now, not knowing, because she's planting a seed of doubt of his sons. And so he's like, basically the math is this: she had sex with Charles one time, and she had sex with Adam one time, and she got pregnant and had babies. So there is like the seed of doubt is in there for like who, if those are his kids. And the as Adam leaves, this is when he continues to engage. He's engaging his kids, so he completely walks away from that. But one theory I have, and I haven't looked into if other people think this too, is like it's mentioned in part 2 when the babies were born. You know, they were both born in their own. You know, they each were born in their own birth sac. So it's like the.
I mean, they're definitely two separate eggs because they're not
right.
They're not
so they're
identical.
They're
twins.
not identical twins, so they're, you know, fraternal. But and then did we talk about this last time or on the podcast? Or did we talk about it off the podcast? That, you know, like there is.
You know, I don't think we said on the podcast, but there's this. This is real. This happens all the time. Yeah, where like one egg is fertilized by one dad.
Yeah.
Another egg is fertilized by another dad.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens enough that we have a specific scientific condition that recognizes it, and it happens like frequently.
Right. So it is possible that like Aaron is Adam's kid, and you know, and Cal is Charles' kid.
Yeah.
You know,
totally possible.
And so, you know, and the only reason I say this is the fact that I don't know if Steinbeck took the time to. He's intentional with his words, so he took the time to write that when Samuel was delivering them, he noticed they were born in separate sacks. If he was just saying these two kids are different, or if he was saying also like these two
from separate
like these could be different, you know. So I don't know, and I think it's left to the reader in a lot of cases. But this is where we see, you know, also Cal, you know, acting as Cathy or Charles would, and not as like Adam or, you know, Aaron would. And so we have to, it's just one thing I was thinking about in there. And you have this bit at the end of here for, you know, for Adam being forced to live out Samuel's proposition. And now that Samuel lives on, kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like,
what's the phrase? Let me find the quote. I got it somewhere. I don't know where it's at. But Lee says, you know, a little bit of him is in you, or he's like a little bit of Samuel Hamilton's in you, and a little bit of him, I think, is in me. I think that's what it means to be immortal. And it's like this idea of like Sam, like I said earlier, you know, his psyche effect on everyone around him. The psyche effect is for sure happening on Adam. And I think it's like, you know, in 32-33 we'll see, but I think it's happening to Tom, his son, as well, and Will in a way. But like, it's clear like there is a theme of like who you are in life lives on through those you touched, whether good or bad. But 31 here, is when Adam's second time confronting Cathy about the money. And it's kind of funny because like we see Lee, and it was weird, man. The whole time I was listening, like I never like really started thinking of Lee as just like the surrogate wife, the bro,
Right.
like the surrogate, like you're my bro, but you're kind of my girlfriend because like you do give me the wisdom of like bad decisions I'm about to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we all knew that person in like college or high school, right? Who like he was your bro, who was the voice of wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And Lee is the voice of wisdom here. Is like, Adam, should I even bother telling you not like what to do with that money?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm pretty sure you're just gonna go and give it to Cathy anyways.
Yeah.
And like Adam's like, well, I think I am gonna go give it to her because I guess that'd be the right thing to do.
Yep.
And Lee's like, knew it. Like storms out. You know,
Yeah.
It was just like it was a very funny interaction because it was both positions were very masculine,
Mm-hmm.
but you could very much tell like Lee was the voice of like, what's the point? What's the purpose? This is not wise in like a safety perspective.
Right.
And Adam's like, well, I guess, I mean, what would Samuel Hamilton do? You know, and it's kind of almost like a little bit of a Samuel Liza, like allegory there. I feel like dichotomy. But I guess, yeah, I think, you know, Adam goes there, he confronts Cathy, he's like, here's the money. She's like, well, what are you up to?
Mm-hmm.
And he's genuinely living out Timshel, man. He's like, it's your money. There you go. And she's like, there's some plot and I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to bring you down with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wonder, like, is it ever expressly stated if she redeems the money or not? I don't know if it's ever clarified if she ever got her portion of the inheritance.
I think she did.
Okay.
You know, I think she did. And it's just like and because similarly to like, we see the interaction between Charles and Adam taking Cyrus's inheritance. Like Adam just has a very cut and dry opinion of it. He's like, for right or wrong, in either case, he's just like, it. The note says, it's to us, so we're taking it. And then like in this case with Charles leaving the money, he's like, says 50-50 split. That is what I'm doing now. You know, and also, and I wonder too. You could assume too, like part of it being like the way that Charles was so apprehensive to take Cyrus's money. You know, he's like, hey, are you sure we can do this? You know, he could also, Adam could be living out like Charles's wishes now, in the same sense of just being like this time I can do it exactly right. Like whereas like before that previous inheritance was wrongly earned. Charles's inheritance he sent on to Adam was like pretty much worked off the, you know, sweat of his brow and breaking rocks and growing more stuff, right? And so it's like he's just like, this is the thing to do. Like we're giving it out this way. And I love the interaction where he just goes in there, and because he's so freed from Cathy, he's just like, he's like, take your money, bitch. Exactly. And he's sorry. He doesn't call her bitch because that would be failing in Timshel. He's like, here's your money. And he's so matter of fact about it. And he just, like, he doesn't care about money. He never has really cared about money. He spent a part of his life just being a vagabond. Like, money's not a driver for Adam. Yeah. You know, and so he's freed from money too. And whereas Cathy's not free from money. That's her only goal. Yeah. And she doesn't even know why. She's just like, I'm just going to make money until I make money, until it's enough to
do something,
do the thing. But she doesn't even know the thing. Yeah. And she kind of talks about the thing, but like she really doesn't.
She never does it.
Yeah. Yeah. She really doesn't know what the thing is. And so Adam's actions are just so antithetical to Cathy's essence that she has no paradigm with which to understand what's happening. It just does not compute. And when he leaves her with the money, it just leaves her shaking, you know, and like she just knows there has to be an angle, there has to be, and we see people like this in our lives. I feel like who are like, they like kind of always a too good to be true. What's the angle here? But people who have that reaction is because they would never do such a thing. Like they would never be generous in that way or just play by the rules in that way, and they just cannot comprehend it. And the notes I wrote when I was reading this book, and I just said, sometimes the best trick is no trick at all. And it's just like, yeah. And the other note I put was just heaping coals on your enemy's head was one I thought too, or it just was like the best way for Adam to win in this situation is by doing exactly what's right. Charles said, give half here, give half there. He went and did it. And now this lady has to live with the wondering, what's the angle? What's the deal? How's he trapping me? What's going to happen? And there's nothing coming. There's nothing happening. And Adam doesn't have to like live with any of that. He just walks away.
Yeah, it definitely feels like the first crack in her foundation. Like the first interaction with Adam confronting her feels like she was able to rebuff it. This one feels like shaken. Like, and it does feel like the first time. Because here's also the thing I noticed is like Adam denying Kate or Cathy is the first time good wins in the book. Like the whole first half of the book is like not good never wins. Being good never wins. It's always victim to evil. And now twice Adam has succeeded in faultlessly being good. And Cathy has lost both battles. And like you could see it shaking the foundation of this person whose whole life is based on being evil.
And
anyways,
it kind of pushes into part 4 a little bit, but from here, like after this point, that's when she starts to have physical decline to her hands are hurting her, these things are going on. She's paranoid about her past. Like, so from here on, it is, like you said, it's the downfall of her story. There's just like, it's a slow decline, but like from here on, like she has no more rise to power.
I want you to do our final chapters here, 32 and 33, because this was an odd thing that I think again was like another. I do think this is its own contained Cain and Abel story. This ballad of Tom and Desi, where Tom is, I think, partly a Cain, Desi's partly an Abel. I don't think it's a perfect narrative, but I do think it is Timshel, and I do think. It is to show on a brief flip side in order to prepare us for part 4. I do think these 2 chapters are just basically to say like, just because you choose to do good does not mean there will be good outcomes. And I do think that's preparing us to understand like what happens in part 4 of like, people do good things in part 4. They don't always get a good outcome.
Right.
And sometimes just bad things happen in life. And that's what happens in life. Life has got bad things that occur. So, but please, give us the ballad of Tom and Desi.
Yeah. So like we said, when we were opening up, Tom embodies the dreamer that was Sam Hamilton. Desi embodies the social butterfly aspect that was Sam Hamilton. And these two, they decide to move back to the farm. Well, Tom's been at the farm, but Desi, she closes up her dress shop. Business is kind of dried up because dresses have become easier to make.
Manufactured.
By manufacturing them.
Like the manufacturing industry in America is booming.
And so people aren't coming to, get a custom dress anymore, which before that was the talk of the town if you were getting a Desi dress. So, and she wants to be back on the farm with Tom, and they are there, and they're dreaming about life and future and fun and having, they're coming up with business ideas. They're running them by Will, and Will tells them all their business ideas are trash and they'll never work, because they probably are, because Will's good at business ideas, and he's just telling them how it is, but
he's there's potential.
Yeah.
And there's some wisdom. There's a lot of naivety.
Yeah, he's raining on their parade, and these things. And Desi had health struggles, and ultimately, while they have a few good days or weeks on the farm, Desi's I couldn't figure out what the actual stomach issue was.
I think it was appendix, ultimately.
The appendix?
From what I understand, when your appendix bursts, it's a very similar thing of like the milky eyes and the poisoning.
And was it salt, or what did he give her?
Salt. So like your appendix is part of your body that processes, those things, the minerals and all that. And salt, like I looked it up afterwards, and they're like, if you if you drank a glass of salt water because you thought your stomach pain was poop or gas,
Mm-hmm.
and you had a bloated appendix, your appendix would burst, and you'd be so dehydrated from trying to process salt water that you would just lock up.
Be donezo.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, what happens in this case is Desi is sick on the couch, and Tom remembers an old family remedy that Liza used to do, which was when you had tummy pain, give him this salt concoction, and he gives it to her, and, she'll probably be better in the morning. And Desi'd also been kind of hiding how bad her stuff had been, and so he thinks he got a stomach ache. He's going to make her feel better, and it ends in this traumatic way of he gives her the salt medicine concoction. It makes it way worse. He's riding off to find the doctor, but it's too late.
It's way too late.
And the doctor calls him a fool for giving her this thing.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "You gave her that, you fool." Next thing he knows, his sister's dead.
Can you imagine, bro? Can you imagine, like, you're bringing your wife into the ICU or something, or your sister? You got a sister.
Yeah.
And you tell the doc, like, you best intentions. You're pretty sure you did the right thing.
Yeah.
And the doctor in the ICU just looks at you while they're grabbing your, the gurney that your sister's on, is like, "You fool, you killed her."
Yeah.
And, like, can you imagine the destitution you'd feel?
No, I mean, I think, like, I can a little, it'd be devastating.
Yeah.
Right. And so this results in Tom having kind of deciding it's done.
Full psychosis breakdown.
Yeah. He's, and he can't forgive himself for this thing. He sees himself as the one who caused her death, and he takes his life. And the part of this as a conclusion to part 4, because conclusion to part 3 leading into part 4, is Steinbeck is using this story in multi-layered ways. He is using it as a Timshel example of, making decisions, and I'll get into that in a second too. But then one thing he's using too is as he breaks up, as he's moved through different parts of this book, he does use examples to move us through history and, like, the times of what's going on. And so, it's part of this is a metaphor for the changing times in America, where you have Will, successful businessman, always looking for the angle of benefit through this disciplined pragmatism, and he is a picture of just American progress. At the time.
Yeah.
And contrasting
selling
this,
the automobile.
Exactly, selling automobiles. He doesn't even know how they work.
He doesn't know how they
but
run.
He's selling them, and he's selling a lot of them. And his, Tom and Desi, who are this kind of the parts of Samuel we're talking about, the dreamer and the person who everybody wants to be around and gather around and be relational with. These two people, they're content. They have a content nature for simple life with family on the ranch, and so they're contrasting these two individuals, and where you have the America's moving away from content family on the farm to, this American progress. And
eventually there'll be suburbs everywhere in Salinas.
Exactly. Exactly. And so, and Tom's ignorance ultimately kills his sister. And that can be seen as, also a reflection of America moving from, like, a traditional time into a more, like, scientific, tech-based age, where you have, like, he was just trying to use this down-home remedy. He was doing his best with what he could, and
old ways are dying,
and
man.
that's not the way to do it.
Yep.
And so, his intention, gives rise to both their demise ultimately. So you could see that as an example too of, like, the old traditional America falling by the wayside of their intentions of the time also being what ultimately takes them out. And one thing that I did like about this was the way that I did think that the way that Steinbeck wrote Tom's suicide was very much like the same way that he wrote Charles's letter to Adam, where it is this, like, very gripping,
possessed
scene. Yeah, it's just a scene, and he's explaining stuff on the wall. It's like you just have to read it where you get fully drawn into it. It's brought alive.
again, he hears the ghost of his father.
Yeah.
Like Samuel's ghost touches Tom in this moment and be like, if you're gonna do it, you make it as easy on your mother as possible.
Oh yeah.
And that was like, I thought that was so heavy. Like I was really moved by that. I was like, probably something Samuel would say to a man who's planning to kill himself.
Yeah.
Make it as easy as you can on your loved ones if your mind's made up.
Yeah. And the note to his mom, I bonked my head on a horse ride.
Well, he doesn't even say, he's like, I love this horse. I love this horse. This horse is great.
Yeah.
I bought this horse. It's a great horse. And then he writes the letter to Will.
Oh, yep. That's
saying,
right.
No matter what, you tell Mom that I got my head kicked in by the horse.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah.
You don't tell her the truth.
Yeah.
And then he shoots himself.
Yep. And that's the conclusion of, part 3. And, Tom was not evil. He wasn't ill intended.
Didn't have an evil bone in his body.
Right. And he was trying to help him do the right thing for his sister, who he loved her dearly. And so the Timshel analogy and process here is kind of turned inside out.
It's kind of ugly.
And on its head, where his free will, his choice resulted in the death of his sister. And then his free will and his choice results in him, taking his own life.
Mm.
And so the Steinbeck kind of wraps up this part 3 with a kind of confused version of Timshel, whereas in when he first introduces it, it's kind of cut and dry.
Mm-hmm.
Thou mayest
do the good thing.
You can do the good or you can do the bad. And by the end, he has this example of it where it's convoluted. What is the right thing? Did he do the right or wrong thing? I don't know. But what happened was sad. Mm-hmm. And this is life.
Yeah. Yeah. Whew. It's great, though, because I think it really sets it up for a slam dunk in the next section with part 4 and all that. So, Ken, thanks for sticking with us. We know these are some long things, but these are some heavy concepts to discuss. And, I truly believe they're concepts that, if you listen and you meditate on them and you ask yourself how they apply to yourself, they can have pretty big impacts on your life. So we hope that you're enjoying your time. We hope that you're enjoying the book, and please recommend it to people and recommend and share the podcast to people. Just so that way they can also enjoy going through and breaking down these themes and parts. Let us know your thoughts, leave comments and all that on the YouTubes, just so we know how you feel about the book and all that. But otherwise, thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us, Pat.
Till next time. Thanks for tuning in. If you love this episode, drop us a review. If you have qualms or comments, leave us a voicemail on our website. While you're there, check out our latest news, merch, and deals from our sponsors. Till next time, Ken.